Assalamu alaikum everybody and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to learn how to factorize quadratic trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c. Where b and c here are constants, meaning that they're two random numbers, but those numbers are fixed, right? They don't change. Whereas x in this case is our variable, and so it could take on multiple different numbers or values. Alright, so first, what's a quadratic trinomial? Because I know it sounds a little complicated. Now, quadratic just means that we have a variable, and in this case we do, right? We have the variable x, and the highest power on x is 2. It doesn't get higher than 2, otherwise it won't be quadratic. Alright? So that's it. Basically a variable that is squared. Alright, so that's quadratic. What about a trinomial? Now, we said in a previous video that a binomial is an expression with two terms. Right? So bi means 2, so 2 terms. And tri means 3, right? As triangle means 3 sides. Right? So, or 3 angles. Right? So, basically a trinomial is an expression with 3 terms. And here we have 3 terms, right? We have x squared, bx, and c. Alright, so 3 total terms. Alright, so I just wanted to make that, terminology clear. Alright, now how do we factorize something that comes in that form? Well, I want to test out something. What happens when I multiply two expressions that both start with x, and then we add a random number to both of them? Alright, so let's add 5 in this first expression, so plus 5. And we could add a negative number, a positive number, doesn't matter. Okay, here we could choose, let's say, 2. Positive 2. Okay, now let's multiply this out. This is equal to x times x gives me x squared. Then I have x times 2, which is just 2x. Then I have 5 times x, which is just 5x. Then I have 5 times 2, which is 10, but I'm going to keep that as 5 times 2. All right, so I'm going to work with this a little bit. This is equal to x squared is just going to remain as x squared plus, now notice the two middle terms that we have here, which are 2x and 5x, both share a common factor, right? They both have x as a common factor. So let's highlight that common factor. So x, and after we pull it out, notice that what remains is 2 plus 5. Okay? So let's do that here. Let's pull out the x, and I'm going to keep the x right at the end. All right, and I can do that because the order in which you multiply doesn't matter. I could keep the x in the end, I could keep it in the beginning, doesn't matter. All right, so let's fill in what remains. So here we have 2 plus 5. All right, and finally we just have plus 5 times 2. Now, does this look like it comes in the same form as this? Well, you can pause the video to try to figure that out. But the answer to that question is yes. Right? They both come in the same form. We have x squared in both of them. All right, so that's good. And here we have bx, and remember, b is just a random number, and we have that here, right? We have 7 times x. So that's good. What about c? Here we have a c at the end, which is basically, again, a random number that doesn't have x attached to it, and we have that here. We have a random number with no x's, right? Just by itself. And so it actually comes in the exact same form. All right, so what this tells us is that when we multiply two expressions that both have x plus a random number, when we multiply them together, we get something in that form. Now, can we make a connection between the result that we have obtained and the numbers that we have chosen? Well, notice the number that is in front of the x is basically the sum of the two numbers that we have chosen. Right? The number that is in front of the x is 2 plus 5, and the numbers that we have chosen are 2 and 5. Okay, so that's one connection. That's pretty cool. What about the number that is by itself? Well, it's actually the product. It's the result of multiplying the two numbers that we have chosen. All right, so is that a coincidence? Well, actually, it's not. You could choose any two random numbers here, right? Whatever numbers you choose, and you could experiment on your own. The number that is in front of the x will be the sum of the numbers that you choose and the number that is by itself at the end, will be the product of the numbers that you choose. And so this is actually very cool because it tells us that whenever we want to factorize an expression that comes in that form, all we got to do is find two numbers that add up to the number that is in front of the x, which is b in this case, and multiply to the number that is at the end by itself with no x's, so c here. All right, so two numbers that add up to b and multiply to c. All right, so let's practice with an example to make this a little bit clearer. All right, so just remove this. So let's factorize x squared plus 3x plus 2. And all we got to do, and by the way, this comes in the exact same form as x squared plus bx plus c. Our b is 3 in this case, and the c is 2. Okay? Now how do we factorize this? Well, we just open up two sets of brackets. All right, we keep x as the first term in both sets of brackets, and this will give us the x squared, right? And whatever numbers we put here they're gonna determine the rest of the expression. Okay, so we want two numbers that add up to 3 and multiply to 2. Okay, so let's write that down. Sum. We want the sum of those numbers to be 3 and their product to be 2. Now, let's list out the factors of 2. What do we multiply to get 2? And we're not going to consider fractions here. Okay, so no to fractions. Well, we can multiply 1 and 2. That's one possibility. And that's actually the only possibility for positive numbers. What about negative numbers? Well, you can multiply negative 1 times negative 2. And luckily, 2 doesn't have that many factors, so I think we're done here. That's it. That's all we can do. All right. Now, which one of those sets here has numbers that add up to 3? Well, let's look at the negative 1 and negative 2. Well, negative 1 plus negative 2 add up to negative 3. So we don't want that, right? We want positive 3, right? So we cancel that. What about 1 and 2? Well, that's perfect, right? 1 plus 2 is 3, right? So 1 and 2 multiply to 2 and add up to 3. So that's great. That's exactly what we want. All right, so positive 1, that's what we fill in the gaps now. Positive 1 and then positive 2. And we're done. Okay? That's it. So I hope that made sense. All right? So let's practice with another example. All right, so let's factorize x squared minus 7x plus 12. And again, this comes in the exact same form as x squared plus bx plus c. Our b in this case is negative 7, and our c is 12. All right, so let's factorize this. So we open up two sets of brackets, and we put in x as our first term. Now we need two numbers that add up to negative 7 and multiply to 12. So let's write that down. Sum is negative 7, and product is 12. Okay, now do we have to consider all of the factors of 12, all the positive and negative factors of 12? Well, that's going to be a lot of work, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so maybe there are some hints for us here to limit the amount of factors to consider. Okay, well, we're looking for two numbers, right? Two numbers that multiply to a positive number. Okay, so this immediately tells me that either those two numbers are both positive or both negative, right? Because they can't they can't have a different sign. If, let's say, one number is positive and the other one is negative, then they will multiply to a negative number. And we can't have that here. We want a positive number. So this immediately tells me that both numbers share the same sign. Now, which sign do they share? Are they both negative or are they both positive? Well, we look at the sum. The sum is negative. Okay? And so this immediately tells me that the numbers that we're looking for are both negative. They can't be positive because otherwise the sum will be positive. Okay? So, so we only consider the negative factors of 12. All right, so what do we multiply to get 12? from the negative factors, negative 1 times negative 12. That's one possibility. Negative 2 times negative 6. That's another possibility. Negative 3 times negative 4. And it looks like that's it. All right. Now, which one of those sets has numbers that add up to negative 7? Well, let's look at the first set here. Negative 1 plus negative 12. What does that add up to? That adds up to negative 13. So we don't want that. All right. What about the second set? Negative 2 and negative 6. Well, they add up to negative 8. So very close to negative 7, but not quite negative 7. So that's out. What about negative 3 and negative 4? Well, that's perfect. Negative 3 plus negative 4, that adds up to negative 7 and multiplies to 12, so that's perfect. So that is the bingo over here. Okay, so we just fill in those numbers, negative 3 and negative 4. Okay, and we're done. All right, so I hope that made sense. Let's do one more example. Let's factorize x squared plus 11x plus 24. Okay, so again, we open up two sets of brackets, and we put x. Okay, now two numbers that add up to 11 and multiply to 24. All right, so sum is 11 and product is 24. All right, now again, I don't have to consider all of the factors of 24, all the positive and negative factors. All right, there are some hints here that allow me to reduce the number of factors to consider. Well, the product is positive. This tells me that both numbers must share the same sign. Both numbers that we're looking for must share the same sign. So they're either both positive or both negative. Now we look at the sum. The sum is positive, meaning that both numbers have to be positive, right? They can't be negative, otherwise they'll have a negative sum. All right, so we only consider the positive factors of 24. All right, so what do we multiply to get 24? 1 times 24. 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, and that's it. That's it from the positive numbers. All right, now which set of numbers adds up to 11? Now 1 and 24 is not the set we're looking for, right? Because 1 plus 24 is 25, not 11. All right, so we cross that out. 2 and 12, what about that? 2 plus 12 is 14. So we don't want that. We want 11. What about 3 and 8? Well, 3 and 8 add up to 11 and also multiply to 24. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So we tick that. And let's consider the last set just in case. 4 plus 6 is 10, which is close to 11, but not quite 11. All right, so that is the bingo over here. That is what we want, 3 and 8. And we just fill those numbers in, so positive 3 and positive 8. And we're done. All right, so I hope that made sense, guys. Whenever you factorize quadratic trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c, just try to open up two sets of brackets, put x as the first term, and then fill in the gaps with the numbers that you need. And again, you need two numbers, right? Two numbers that add up to the number that is in front of the x and multiply to the number that is on its own at the end. And that's it. Fill those numbers in, and you would have factorized that quadratic trinomial. All right, so again, guys, as usual, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below, and I'll try to get back to you. I hope I made the concept simple, and that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you next time.